Okay, so it is 12:05. Welcome, everyone. Welcome. Thank you all so much for coming today. My name is Tiffany Dubon Yard. I work in the Office of Student Life, and I'm one of the co-leads of the Social Justice Network. With that being said, today we are honored to have a great speaker with us. We also have Dr. Ivana Razo as our moderator and host today. Please, I'm going over the Zoom rules really quickly. So as you all notice, you are all muted. Please remain muted unless you are asked to unmute yourself to maybe clarify a question or a comment. We are accepting all questions and comments in the chat. Feel free to utilize the chat um, during this time, and we will get to all questions at the end of the presentation. Also, you'll notice that a couple of us have changed our display names to include our preferred pronouns. If you would like to do so, please feel free to do so. You can hover over your name in the participants list and you'll see the option that says more. Once you click on more, you'll see rename. And once you click on that, you have the option to go ahead and add those pronouns in there or to just include your first and last name if that's how you choose to stay. If there are any questions, feel free to, regarding technical issues, feel free to shoot me a message privately in the chat, okay, Tiffany Dubon Yard. If there are any questions in regards to the presentation and today's event, feel free to shoot your questions to Dr. Yvonne Erazo. So without further ado, please help me welcome Dr. Yvonne Erazo Davila.
Thank you, everybody. I am so happy to see so many people here today. This is a very important topic that we have. I think this is the first time it's being presented at BCC. It's even made especially more important within this month because it is Black History Month, and we are looking at it from a different perspective, various perspectives, right? Implicit bias, a person of color focus, and so we 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 are open to questions. As Tiffany did mention, you can direct your questions to me either in the chat um, or publicly or privately in the chat. We encourage you to change uh, your names, your display names, to be your first name plus your preferred pronouns. We also encourage strongly respect. Okay, this is a safe space, and we will conduct accordingly those who do not respect the space. So I know everyone in here has a lot of respect for each other and will act with respect um, and listen to everything everyone has to say with an open mind and heart. And so my name, now we can get to that. Now that that's out. My name is Dr. Ivana Razo, and I am a student life specialist in the Office of Student Life for Student Activities. And I'm also a part of the Social Justice Network, which kind of began in the midst of everything that happened last year. And you can see more of our events. Please look out for our events through the BCC broadcast and through our social media. And so right now I have the honor to introduce our keynote speaker today. Um, Kyle Williams is a graduate of the Howie the Harps peer training program. Kyle's preferred pronouns are they and them. Kyle merged a background of lived experiences in the varying spectrums of mental health, a service for vulnerable populations, and the LGBTQ and LGBTQIA intersectionality with educational resource. A person of non-binary identity and a present member of the LGBTQIA community, they discovered the need to create an online webinar discussing the mobility of safe space and the use of pronoun identity and the use that pronoun identity offers. Inducing a backbone of Black and POC focus, they used the discoverability of their own intersections to share how pronouns matter from personal to professional. Without further ado, Kyle Williams.
Thank you. You did amazing, Yvonne. It's okay. I know pronouns are, as we will learn today, are a tricky subject, and we will explore that. I'm very thankful to be here. My name is Kyle. My pronouns are they, them. I did graduate from Howard the Heart, so I have a lot of lived experience that bridges a whole host of intersectionality, from LGBTQI to mental health to a lot of just lived experience that present who I am today. I'm excited to be here. I'm thankful to be here, and let's get started. I'm gonna share my screen. And Tiffany and Yvonne, is it okay if I try something and just let me know if you cannot hear it, okay?
Sure, no problem.
Can you hear it? Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
So Kyle, hold on. Can you pause that for a second? When you go ahead and share, right? The window that pops up for you, you'll see at the very bottom of that it says share audio as well. So this way we can hear it better rather than hearing it through. So when you go to in the Zoom screen, you'll see where it says share screen. So when you click on that, the new dialog window is going to pop up and it shows you, right, which screen is it that you want to share.
Yep.
So
share computer sound.
Yep, click on share computer sound. So then this way we can hear along with the video.
Okay. This. All right.
Emma, hi.
There you go, perfect.
You're neither male nor female, right?
That's true. I identify as non-binary, which means that I'm neither male nor female, and correspondent to that, I use the they, them pronoun.
And you said gender roles are damaging our society, so we need to think very carefully about language, yeah?
Yes, so a lot of our social selves are codified and encultured in the language that we use. We really use it to construct our entire society. And what's certainly true is that there is a huge variance of gender presentation and gender identity within humankind. There isn't simply
humankind,
men and women. Exactly, humankind in space of mankind.
You wouldn't say mankind, that should be, you know.
I wouldn't, just because humankind is a more accurate descriptor, in the same way that me using they, them is a more accurate descriptor of my identity than using he or she.
Would you use Homo sapiens?
I very rarely in my life use scientific language to describe the people I work with.
Wise man, it means. Okay, but I mean, it's something, do we need to think about that?
I think we certainly should be thinking about the evolution of language to support gender neutrality.
Yeah, got you.
And that's for a number of reasons. The first of which is that it stops this assumption that either the most important people in the room are men or that the only people in the room are men. And secondly, it does include that wider spectrum of gender. There's an excellent quote by German linguist Louisa Pusch, who says that gender and language should be both comfortable and fair. And she was referring to German, which is one of the most strictly gender-codified languages in Europe.
German.
And English is not...
What's happening in German?
So German has a grammatical gender and a gendered pronominal system. So they use gendered pronouns and they have gendered nouns, and that's supported by the wider grammar of the language. But actually the German state is encouraging lecturers, professionals and industry to use gender-neutral language.
God, a great example if that had been back.
So in universities, a bit like the University of Hull, universities in Germany, their lecturers are using gender-neutral language to refer to students because it's inclusive of everyone and gives that space for trans people who are neither male nor female.
Yeah, it's a matter, Andrew, it's a matter of courtesy, this, and sensitivity, isn't it?
Courtesy is all very well. I mean, you're describing encouraging people to use certain words. My problem is when words are policed. When language becomes police, that is my problem. I mean, look, we can all go back to those sorts of things, humankind or mankind. I mean, those are sort of interchangeable now. They're synonymous anyway. We're talking about when people actively, and it is a minority of activists, it really is a minority, seek to have people disciplined or sacked because they refuse to use language that they are imposing. That's not the evolution of language, that's the imposition of language, and I think that's problematic.
I think it really depends on the context. So you may, for example, be perfectly grammatical.
But I wouldn't say, you hear what it says.
And I'm going to
I would say that it is dehumanizing. Yeah. It shouldn't ever be a voice for the entirety of the trans community. So
right here.
We're all male and female. We've always, yes, of course, we're all male and female. There are
what about transgender people?
There are a tiny minority of people who have intersex conditions, and there are a tiny minority of people who have some condition where they may have a female brain and a male body. Apart from this, we are all male and female, and the attempt to suggest that there is a third gender is, as far as I'm concerned, it's an ideological and a political project. It doesn't exist. The words male and female have existed throughout history, throughout the world. They refer, men are people who have penises, women are people who have vaginas. It's as simple as that. I would absolutely refuse to refer to this woman here, who's clearly a woman, as a they, because for me that would be imposing an ideological political system. Because she is. If everybody watching this program can see that she is a woman, and that is imposing.
All right, so I'm gonna stop there. I included this. I thought this clip was extremely important because you get to see different people's views, and it merges a background of how people view gender and identity. And, you know, just, it was supposed to be a safe space. That clip was so important to me because I think what happens with gender and sexuality is people with the most privilege like to gaslight communities with less privilege. That entire clip was just full of gaslighting and not allowing a person to step in the room and say, this is how I identify, as well as the audaciousness of like imposition that had nothing to do with anything, because I mean, it's not one side to that coin. So that was extremely important to me, and to include that, because you get to see what person you want to be. Do you want to be the person that presents themselves as their gender identified gender, or do you want to be the person that gaslights someone and is saying, oh, it doesn't exist, or I want to use erasure and I want to, you know, use a form of violence. You get to have your views. You get to have views that are tied to your belief system, your upbringing, but you want to make sure that your efforts are tied to the world at large. And that world at large is no longer just a monolith in gender. So let's get started. Pronouns matter. This is, make sure I can. Right, so this presentation today, it's Pronouns Matter. Some wider visibility of gender and non-gender pronouns, create mobile safe spaces and connection. So learning objectives today, we have a few learning objectives. Intro and gender identity, non-gender conformity, LGBTQIA pioneers, intersex, cisgender responsibility, sexuality and gender, types of pronouns, adultification and POC dynamics, intentional EDU, and value of self-disclosure. Pronouns matter. This presentation focuses on the foundation of language engagement, offering those with a standard gender lens to consider inclusive language. The notion of mobile safe spaces for marginalized communities to find comfort with those who are educated on community norms. So why consider pronouns? Here are a few reasons. One, it's a law. Thank God that we're finally there. It's a law. It's a local law. The acknowledgement of pronouns also entail a sense of intentional education and respect to public regard. The use of pronouns invites solidarity to marginalized populations and a sense of safety and respect to personal identity. The use of pronouns causes in questioning individual safety through community as well. And the use of pronouns bridge mutual right to personal belief and identity. The consideration of pronouns highlights cultural competency and social justice. So these foundations to me are very important. It's always a great effort for any institution, any business, any school, to consider how you structure environments that break outside of the societal norm that we have in the binary. The binary, we'll actually just discuss that in later slides, are man and woman. It's a standard lens in which we know everything. It's the standard lens in which the doctor spoke about earlier, about how man and woman is associated with our biological sex organs, et cetera. And then there are people who fall outside of that. You know, there's a host of people that's like, you know what? I don't care what my organs do. This is who I am. That doesn't mean anything to do anything. And if I am a person of trans experience, I will have the right to get the proper gender reassignment surgery or not. It doesn't erase my trans experience. So we'll talk about that. Pronoun impact. So it's a various pronouns impact. It's great to be in 2021. We're further than we've ever been when it comes to pronouns, identity, and how that's merged with a POC focus. I included Tori Wolf Simpson. She's a co-founder of Black Pearl. It's an organization for Black and Brown and Indigenous transgender and queer women. And they use the pronouns as they, them, theirs, in a place of she, hers, and hers. And it goes against, like the doctor spoke of earlier, of how when you look at how somebody appears, we're no longer in the age where you can just look at someone and assume their gender. You know, somebody's feminine attributes, somebody's feminine extension, somebody's masculine attributes, somebody's masculine extensions, and no longer is subjected to just man or woman. There are plenty of people who fall in between. My pronouns are mine. Will Simpson said, I want you to respect me. I want you to know that you respect me by acknowledging the pronouns I've chosen. Not by using someone else's pronouns correctly. When you misgender someone, you're outing them, you're traumatizing them, and you're putting them in an unsafe situation that can get them killed. And for some people with other lived experience that are more on the cis-het notion, we'll talk about it. Cis-het meaning cis, same gender, heterosexual. We live in this society that is foundationally white cis-het, especially white cis-het and patriarchal. So when someone says you can get them killed, the person killed by outing them, it's very serious. We've had already, I think we're up to 6 in the new year of trans people literally murdered for existing. That is always going to be a problem. Black trans women specifically are facing an epidemic right now, a pandemic. Sorry, I heard something? Okay.
So did you say literally murdered? That's pretty bad.
No, yes, actually, yeah, literally murdered, murdered for existing. And people have a host of reasons as to why they think this is happening. And it's also very violent because they attribute it to sex work, which is nobody should die for sex work. You know, it's nothing nobody can really say. Nobody should die for existing. It's a human rights issue. So just this year, and that's separate from the hundreds that were in the past year. I think last year we actually almost hit 100. And anytime there's a smaller community in the rate in which you're getting killed, it becomes an epidemic because it's not enough people of trans experience to be murdered for people to just ignore, like, oh, it's just, you know, a human being getting killed. It's a hate crime. So we're facing these issues. And this is why safety is so important, and how you approach it is so important with people, because some people are still in questioning. And questioning individuals deserve the same respect as trans people, as cis people who are gay. So it's a rainbow of walking the tightrope of respect and safety. As I was speaking about earlier, gender, man or female. I say man or woman. I typically don't like male or female because I think people kind of get that confused with like animals and how we like correlate animals and like male or female. And you know, when men tend to get mad and say, you know, you females, which is like another word for the B word. So I always check my like cishet friends, like, what are you really trying to say? So I say man or woman, let's just go with the gender that we use, it's fine. You know, this is how we correlate and identify the binary system. So non-binary describes any gender identity which does not fit in the male or female binary spectrum. I happen to be non-binary. Took 29 years for me to get there, but I realized that I was performing manhood and masculinity as a way of survivability. And some days I'm almost forced to. Some days I have to consider, what do I want to wear? How do I want to present myself? I don't really have the freedom without compromising my safety in the neighborhood that I'm in spaces to be like, this is me. I'm at the point in my life now where I'm being more audacious, and I'm being more, if something happens, something happens. But that consideration that my safety is compromised by this. I can literally take this off by how I put my eyebrows on, by how I want to, what clothes I want to wear. Am I feeling, is my spirit a little more femme, a little more feminine, a little more, androgynous today? These are things I have to consider. These things I've always considered. And it took 29 years for me to be like, you know what? If something's going to happen to me, I need to go out being myself. And it's dark. That's a dark consideration, but I think a lot of people who are in the trans experience, who are non-binary, who are femme, who are gay and effeminate, they have to experience these, or trans men who are, experience their form of masculinity and having to perform that when, it should be innate, it should be self-identifiable. We all face this angst and this reality that we cannot come home by being who we are. And that and whoever we engage with, it takes more effort to see where they are intellectually. Do they know about pronoun usage? Do they know what non-binary means? Do they know what trans means? Do they know by using the word tranny, it's an act of violence? These things that we can no longer use. So we are not where we should be, but I'm thankful for language. I'm thankful for comprehensive efforts that invite people of a safe space of mutuality to learn, and hopefully we'll get to a point where people like me don't have to consider safety or compromising safety for their existence. So binaryism, assumption that gender experience is binary, and the devaluation of non-binary experiences of gender. So, as I was saying before, non-binary and genderqueer. So, the great thing about the LGBTQ community, LGBTQI plus, we playfully dubbed the alphabet community. We have a host of identities, and I think it is amazing. I think it's our power. I think it's something that we have learned that is our driving force. It's no longer, we don't need to know, especially with black people and POC, it's no longer, I don't even know this, I don't even know that about you. Just go ahead and, keep that under the cover. It's a sense of, this is who I am, this is a sense of being. So genderqueer focuses on that spectrum. We have it literally is like the rainbow. It's a prism, it's a spectrum. So non-binary identity is not mutually exclusive with being intersex. Sometimes non-binary individuals undergo medical procedures to match their gender identity, but that's sometimes. Some people don't fit into the categories of man or woman or male or female. Non-binary people feel their gender identity cannot be defined within the margins of gender binary. Non-binary has become an umbrella term as well as an identity category in its own right. And non-binary identities have been recognized for millennia by cultures and societies around the world. So yeah, this has been here, especially in cultures like ancient Egypt, like you'll see or cultures that exemplify their gender, two-spirit, this experience and personal experience that falls in between, I don't fit the constructs in which the world, moves. I don't fit in. Where do I fit in? How do I express myself? That's something that I identify with. And in terms of how do I, what do I put on a paper when I ask a man or woman? Am I allowed to be literal when it comes to my medical? Should I be literal? I know it's about my health, but what about my identity? And I see small efforts. I see some doctors' offices having the option for non-binary and a personal trans experience, and it's usually focused on things that have to do with different type of health experiences, et cetera. But we are edging to inclusivity that offers safe space so people can be them full selves and get the services that they need, as well as just genuinely feel safe in whatever environment. This is one of my favorite people, Ari. Ari has had many different name changes, so Ari may not be Ari now. I believe it's actually Arrow now. Ari is a person of non-binary, but really trans experience. They're somewhere in the middle because they're still in their transition. They're very open about it on their YouTube. You can look them up, Arrow Fits. They're a model. I included them because it's almost jaw-dropping to see somebody in the public eye who is a professional supermodel who no longer fits in the category that I guess people would assume they would fit in with their natural biological parts, with breasts, with things like this that they embrace that no longer mean for them woman, that no longer mean anything that is tied to their sexuality. And I want to, before we go forward, I just want to say that sexuality and gender is not synonymous. It's a completely separate experience. And you can have a lot of people who have a gender identity that completely goes against whatever you may think biologically. And that is two separate experiences. And for a lot of people, it's a second coming out story. And it's ever evolving for some people. It's not just I woke up and one day, I figured I was trans and that's it. A lot of trans people go through many different experiences, which is really our inheritance, really the LGBTQI community's inheritance and our right. And for POC people and Black people, I really, really like to say that it's buying back our autonomy. This is Black History Month. So with Black people and POC people, especially Black people who have had their lives interrupted by chattel slavery, by systemic racism, by all of these things that have been completely degrading towards the Black experience, when I see a person, a queer person, a genderqueer person, a person of lived experience, a person of trans experience, living their life audaciously, I understand that they are literally purchasing in the zeitgeist their autonomy. They're saying, I can afford to experience this portion of my life and not be my authentic self. And I think that is the most amazing, courageous thing I think anybody can, experience. So LGBTQI pioneers, it's a whole bunch. I included two. I had the courage to just kind of message Amaya and Tariq Ali on Twitter and see if they had anything. Amaya just gave me her pronouns, she and her, and which I think was amazing because she is a person of trans experience. She was on the show Star. She's a pioneer. To see a person, a Black trans person in that type of light and that realm, we really get to see it unless it is commodifiable or it is a situation where the trans person is made fun of. Laverne Cox made this great, I don't know the name, but she made this amazing film that's on Netflix that talks about the trans experience and how for eons, Black people's only notion and norm, and POC people's notion of norm of what trans was, oh, that's a transvestite, or, oh, that's a man dressing up in a dress, and all these violent things. And now, we're at the point in 2021 where they're saying, oh, people are too sensitive. I miss the days people can just laugh, but your laughter is literally causing people to life. Like people are literally dying from your laughter. And it's not that trans people and not-binary people don't have humor. We do, but not to the expense of our lives, not to the expense that you look at us as a joke and we're not livable organisms and human beings just as you are. Tariq Ali, who I love, amazing person. They actually go by he, him, and his. They identify as cis, but also identify as gender nonconforming. So that means they're comfortable with their pronouns of him, he, him, and his. Depending on the context of the situation, it can go they, them, because they are gender nonconforming. You can look at them, you may think, oh, that's a man or a pretty man, but they or he has to allow you and give you the invitation to invite what pronoun needs to be used and what is the identity that feels most present to them in that moment, in that evolution of their life. And they said, I said, I think the pronouns are important because they help people to express themselves how they choose, and not by what other people assume. When you respect other people's pronouns, you're respecting their existence and who they proclaim to be. Just an amazing quote. I could not agree more. Intersex. Intersex people are often overlooked in even the LGBTQI community. The violent part about the intersex experience is how people only focus on intersex people's biological parts, their experience with their biology and how they identify with their biology, and it's just extremely violent. It's always about their sexual organs. It's never about the person that they identify with or proclaim to be. It's always, well, what were you born with? You know, the term especially in the hood, in the in the POC communities, oh, hermaphrodite, violent. No, like that's not that person's experience. That is something that we have taken and coined and made this act of just erasure and disdain. So intersex, the proper terminology is intersex people, and intersex people will tell you who they are and what they, if they have embraced both parts of themselves, that's really none of your business. It depends on the context, on what they're comfortable with, but they are people. Intersex is a gender term used for a variety of conditions, quotation marks, in which a person is born with a reproductive or sexual anatomy that doesn't seem to fit the typical definitions of male to female. Transgender people have a gender identity or gender expression that differs from their sex assigned at birth. So I put that because I think a lot of people confuse the intersex experience with the trans experience, and they're completely different experiences. And I think they deserve their own respect in their own regard. I believe people should be very careful about how they approach people who are intersex. And as always, I'm going to put ask my pronouns. If it's a situation that an intersex person has invited you to and be investigative or learn about that experience, still ask the pronouns, still assume. Don't assume because they have on a suit or a dress that's what you're looking at, or who you're talking to, or how you're correlating things. All right. Quote from Johnny Leggett: as a Black fat intersex queer person, I don't see people like me in the media, even in the LGBTQI world. I stay shrouded in depression and disdain of myself because of it. This is such an important quote to me. Some people might be triggered by the word fat. Let the person use what they feel is relevant. This whole quote is intersectionality at its finest. Black, fat, and intersex, and queer, a host of identities that are well off the spectrum of fit body privilege. We already know the experience of being Black in this country. Intersex, people that acts of violence, and queer, it's a whole survivability construct in itself. It's when you see people like this, even in LGBTQI community, because my belief is because of indoctrination and how people maneuver through the world. I call it the oppression Olympics. A person of this experience is also sometimes not even appreciated or valued or loved in my community because of what has been impressioned from the harmful constructs of our society, cishet, white, patriarchal. These are constructs that have not allowed other identities to come into the forefront and say, hey, I exist too. Hey, I deserve safety too. Hey, I deserve some type of power too. I deserve a seat at the table. So a person like this, who is a host of things that people deem confusing, worthy of erasure, not worthy of really investigating or doing too much, as if doing too much has ever been a bad thing, has this experience where depression is triggered, low self-esteem and disdain is triggered. Where can they feel safe? Where can they find identity and community? And if they do, how safe is it? Is the community educated? Are the people educated? Are they embracing? right? So non-binary terms, it's a lot. It's a lot. Genderqueer, agender, gender fluid, a bigender, and gender fluid is very important. I'm not gonna do it, but I had this video that it interviews a gender queer person. I can put it in the chat. It was really, really amazing. It was 10 questions to ask a gender queer person. And the gender fluid person just talked about the acts of violence that they've experienced by being smaller framed, by embracing facial hair, by embracing a low haircut, things that fall outside of what we associate gender to be. This wig, I'm bald. I love this wig. I deserve this wig. I deserve to use this wig. That should be my right. It should be comfort for me to throw on a wig, throw on whatever expression I need, and I should be able to maneuver. But as I said earlier, that's not the case. I have to pick and choose my battles. I have to pick and choose where I want to feel safe or comfortable in. And a gender fluid person gets a different act of violence because people are policing how they identify separate from their sexuality. You know, a lot of smaller framed people are often met with acts of violence. As we know, a lot of cis women, trans women, you know, it's a risk going out at night to go to your car. You know, you have to think about, can I get in the morning? As a person of non-binary experience, my privilege is being larger framed. You know, if I want to cosplay masculinity, if I want to cosplay a sense of manhood, I can maneuver a lot more easier than somebody who is smaller or more effeminate, or you know, just doesn't fall inside the lines of what's identifiable. So these systems are created to ensure either oppression or ensure that people have to survive in the Olympics of somebody else's oppression. And it can be very harmful and very time consuming. And I'm always in awe of people, like especially Generation Z, who do it extremely audaciously. Of course, Generation Z is not the first, but Generation Z is really in your face. Millennials are in your face.
Kyle, you are back in track.
All right, and my screen is clear. I'm not bothered. So we're good. But as I was saying earlier, I mean, that's an example of violence. It happens no matter where you go. I mean, it's even virtually. Even what's on Twitter, a lot of people say a host of degrading things that can really trigger somebody's suicidal ideation, how somebody feels about themselves. I'm fine, child. I'm 30. So, you know, I can get through something that, you know, involves an act of violence. But again, even that's a privilege. The way I can maneuver situations like that could really deter somebody. That experience can really be harmful. So again, you want to decide what person you want to be. Do you want to be inclusive? Do you want to be somebody that offers safe space? Do you want to be somebody that is so possessed by whatever you feel is not according to what's the binary, what's right to you? Do you want to be that person? You know, whatever you choose to be is your right. But I believe that people deserve safe space, respect, and a foundation of mutuality. So all of these terms are here. A lot of these terms are culturally specific, have to do with people's region. I know a lot of people in Hawaii have a host of identifiable terms that deal with third gender neutral, but I think it's beautiful. I think a lot of cultures that are, you know, especially are less westernized, here. I just don't know Hawaii is a part of America, but just like, westernized culture, that's like, just American culture. We're still learning. How to adapt these terms. And a lot of experiences that are culturally specific have gender neutral terms. Right? Oh no, is it not going? All right, so cisgender. A lot of people are cisgender. It's probably like maybe 50% cisgender people here, which I think is great. Cisgender literally just means you identify with the gender that you were born with, right? So you are cisgender. You are okay with your biology. You're okay with how that biology is expressed, and it's not be confused with cishet. We'll talk about that afterwards. But cisgender is just you identify with what you were born with, and one can be heterosexual, gay, bi, or pan. Remember that gender is a separate experience from sexuality. So I included privileges. Privileges to me should be foundational. This should be where people start. What are your privileges? My privileges is being able-bodied, larger bodied. My privileges include yes, being able to hear, which is is being able-bodied. A host of other things that I am privileged to have. Having family members, former privileges. What are your privilege lies? What are the foundation of our society? What do we look at? We know we live in a construct, in a society that teeter-totters on white supremacy, that a lot of people, including our allies, are trying our best to be like, it's time to usher in a new area of inclusivity. We're also a society that is a little bit forceful with how we view gender in boy, girl, man or woman, heterosexual, for eons, we've seen a host of heterosexual-based movies, cartoons that implied heterosexuality, and then the moment LGBTQI got some representation, it was a problem, and it's like, oh, you're changing our kids, you're doing this to our kids, as if kids don't grow up in a society in which a host of sexuality and representation is expressed. We're not talking about adultification, we're not talking about hypersexuality, we're just talking about representation and how great representation can cause people to have options. A lot of queer people who never thought, well, I can't do that because I've never seen my story, that's being rewritten. We have a host of movies and representation that involve people's nuances, people's privileges are being checked. So I included some examples of heterosexual privilege, which was incorporated because heterosexuality is the dominant sexuality, identifying sexuality in this country specifically. And it's something we're constantly trying to just, let's include everybody. So I think a lot of people who are heterosexual or who are cishet do not consider that they, public recognition for support of the intimate relationship. We're getting to a point where a lot of people are like, it's okay to be gay, which I love. Expressing affection in most societal situations and not expecting hostile or violent reactions from others. We're getting there. You can't go everywhere and do that, but you can pick and choose, which is great. Learning about romance, relationships from fiction, movies, and television. Having positive and accurate media images of people with whom you can identify. Expecting to be around others of your sexuality most of the time, not worrying about being the only one of your sexuality in a class, on a job, or in a social situation. Working in traditionally male or female dominated job and not feeling as though you are representative of your sexuality, not having to hide or lie about when or men are on one of these social activities, the bathroom thing that we experienced a couple years ago, the ability to teach about lesbians, gay men, and bisexuals without being seen as having a bias because of your sexuality or forcing a homosexual agenda on students, what I just spoke of. Going wherever you wish and know that you will not be harassed, beaten, or killed because of your sexuality, knowing that being open with your sexuality isn't going to change how people view you. Things that I just want people who are cishet, who are heterosexual to consider. In no way, shape, or form am I implying that heterosexual people are the bad And in no way, shape, or form am I implying that cishet people are dense or don't comprehend these things. It's just an acknowledgement that you have more privileges in a society that doesn't allow other communities to have the freedom and the survivability to literally just be. And that's something to consider. And also, you know, we have white privilege, male privilege, ableism, body privilege, light skin privilege in the POC community and Black communities, which is touchy subject because it deals with colorism, pretty privilege, first world privilege, you know, foundational privilege in terms of like Christianity, having that be a foundational religion, religious, you know, intersectionality and all these things that deal with what is this country founded on? How do we, what is everything under that? And how do we maneuver? How do we identify? So cishet identity. So I chose this. This is a very important slide. This slide I feel is a little jarring because of the people that I included, especially the person I included, that's Dr. Umar. I always let cishet people know that with privileges, you can use it for good or you can use it for selfish or violent reasons. Privilege does not have to be a bad thing. Privilege is an acknowledgement that how I maneuver and the freedom and ease in how I maneuver is because I am under constructs that protect me. So cishet is used as both the adjective and a noun describing a person who is both cisgender and heterosexual. A person is cishet if he or she is cisgender, meaning identifying with his or her assigned at birth gender, as well as heterosexual or attracted exclusively to people of the opposite sex. And it often has negative connotations. It often has negative connotations in the media with cishet Black men, cishet Latinx men, because of their implicit and explicit biases. And every now and then you'll see a wonderful example of a cishet man, cishet woman who understands foundational privilege and what inclusivity does for othering communities that are often left to the wayside, communities that are grouped together because they don't fit the monolith. I always encourage cishet people to stand in the gap. It's so much easier to be an ally than just, you know, than to express implicit or explicit biases. I have a group of brothers who are cishet, and we do a lot of work in healing and teaching each other. They teach me things about their aspects of manhood and how they survive. And I teach them things about my community and non-binaryism. And I do a lot of allyship with women and say, hey, again, don't use females, please. And, you know, just checking them on, you know, their acts of violence that are often indoctrinated. It's something that's often learned. And after they become adults, they're like, you know what? I could be a little more, I can be a little easier. You know what? Maybe that's just not my business. Oh my God, you're a great person. Oh, you're not trying to hit on me. No, I'm a person living and breathing. I know who I like. And, you know, and I also like community. I also like, I like my community to be a reflection of the world. I just don't have one set identity. I just don't have a whole bunch of gay friends. I don't have a whole bunch of non-binary friends. I have a host of friends that reflect the world that we live in. And my hope is that we can finally get to that point. Unlike that person earlier, you know, maybe one day they'll have somebody in their life that are non-binary and gay or Black, and they won't have to have that type of bias. So this is just, if you're cishet, just hold space. Hold space. If whoever has the most privilege has the power to hold the most space. And holding space can be a transformative act. It can be a transformative, amazing bridge of mutuality and understanding. Oh, I can actually play this. Wow, usually doesn't play. Let me see. Now,
you want to be a good ally? Show up for your trans friends. You don't need to change the world. Show up on a local, palpable level for the people in your life who matter to you.
A good ally is someone who knows how to speak, how to be heard, but also how to listen.
A good ally knows when to shut up and takes a step back and uplifts the people that need their voices to be heard.
I think one of my biggest frustrations with allies actually comes from the people who purport to be very liberal and very informed. I've experienced a lot of people who think that they know exactly what they're talking about and are very resistant to hearing anything to the contrary. They're not interested at all in when you say, hey, what you just said really hurt me, and so if you could use this instead, and they're like, well, no, I say this, and that's how I've always said it, and it's fine. I had one gay person tell me it was fine.
You need to know as an ally not to speak over people, not to speak for people, and not to tell other people's stories that are not your own, but be able to stand in for someone when they need you to, when they ask you to, and say and use the information that you know to combat hate and bigotry.
A good ally is someone who is willing to make sacrifices in order for all of us to have a better life.
All of us to have a better life. All of us includes everybody on the rainbow or standing on the grass. Everybody. And I always kind of encourage intentional EDU. I think it's amazing that these spaces are held, that institutions are holding community forums that allow people to have a sense of educational resource, but also you can really tell who's really about it when people educate themselves, when it becomes more of, well, you're the gay person in the room, tell me this. You know, that person is going to give you their version of their lived experience via their sexuality or their gender expression. It's not going to be the standard for everybody. So you have to make sure that when you come with questions to a person who is representative of the community, you have done a sense of work. There's a sense of foundation behind you to have a more solid inclusion efforts. Like, you should know what pronouns are. You know, you should know how, you know, what are your pronouns? Hi, my name is, and my pronouns are, you know, holding that space in the way that your allyship is not performative. Nobody likes performative allyship. It's the same thing that we didn't like with Black Lives Matter and last year, where we were holding people who are allies and telling them, you know, your silence equals violence. Don't be performative. You know, show me the work that you've done. Step aside. All of these things that really, really matter with allyship. And it's the same thing with intersectionality in communities. So, pronouns and then trans in the military. Our identities are in everything. There's nothing there's literally virtually nothing that you can like just, oh, that is necessary. Sorry, it's not necessary for you to let me know that you're trans or you're not binary in this sector. No, it matters, because for a lot of people in a lot of institutions and spaces, we're still having first. We're still having first this and first that. So trans people in the military are no different. They serve our country. Unfortunately, the military is still very cishet and patriarchal, and they do not comprehend the need for people to exist, even in spaces that literally means their lives. So pronouns matter when those in the position of power impede on the human condition of others with not much comprehension on gender identity and mutuality. On April 12, 2019, under the new rules, troops and recruits can identify as transgendered, but must use their uniforms, pronouns, and sleeping in bathroom facilities for their biological sex. That is extreme gaslighting. They will not be allowed to serve if they have a diagnosis, which is, again, violent, because it's not a diagnosis, it's a lived experience, of gender dysmorphia, a disorder in which a person's gender identity does not match their physical gender at birth. This is not a ban. Transgender people can still serve, he said, so as long as they adhere to the standards of their biological sex. You know, I don't really know what change was made, but that lets you know where we are foundationally in the country, that a person can give their life and to serve in the country, and that can literally mean their life, and their identity can still be policed. That's a problem, and that is an act of violence. Per the United States Coast Guard, service members who have been diagnosed with gender dysmorphia, or in the case of reservists have a diagnosis confirmed by a military medical provider before April 12, 2019, may be allowed to transition genders under the previous policy and continue serving in the Coast Guard. My hope is that trans people can just be trans people, and trans people, non-binary people, people who want to do whatever they want to do in the highest form of good, in the highest form of service, can literally get a chance to be their authentic selves. And unfortunately, the military has a way to go. It's, you know, reflection of the country. We have a ways to go. Nothing is perfect, but if we have efforts like this, my hope is these things will start to change. People start to see, for the fullness of life and the fullness of one's journey, people need to be able to be their authentic selves, no matter what. All right, so this is a very important slide to me as well. Adultification and race dynamics and pronouns.
And I said, I'm changing my gender. And he was like, what do you mean you change your gender? I was like, I'm changing my gender. You can change your gender. And he was like, I'm doing it too. Take 4. Okay. They want like a twin thing. Okay. We are female to male transgender. I hope I said that right without looking down. Yeah. I did. I think I did, didn't I?
And I'm gonna fast forward it for time. There's a very important part in their story that I wanted to include right here.
We were able to do that around the same year. There's a lot of transgender men out there who choose not to get the bottom half. They will actually just prefer getting their top, but for me, that's not me completing me. I feel like I need to do what I need to do. I got the top, I got my histo, so now the next step is for me to get my bottom. The discrimination that we come up against, the only thing I would say was probably the hardest thing about probably being transgender or trans male is the fact is with the whole police situation thing going on as far as targeting black men, that was something I was like, that's what I'm gonna have to deal with. Yeah. I was like, so it kind of was a nerve-wracking thing to be driving out or going out or walking. You just walking on the sidewalk, you was like, you don't know if you're gonna get pulled over by the cops, which we have. And we done been followed in the store and everything. I was like, this is what black men go through. I had boyfriends before. I just never went that far until I met one guy when I was probably like, what, 16 or something like that. And I just, we only dated for a short period of time. I knew I was not comfortable dating men after that. I was like, after finally being sexually active with him, it was just like, okay, this is not for me. And I broke up with him, and then maybe 3 months later, having sickness, and I was like, I thought I was pregnant. So that's when I ended up with my son, Carlos.
All right, so I'm gonna stop there. This was very important for me to include in this slide. You have 2 trans men, 2 Black trans men who are men, who have more than likely experienced the adverse effects of years and years upon years of systemic racism and all type of things. Black women, Black girls, Black cisgender girls go through a host of adultification and dynamics that degrade their being before they're even women. And I thought it was very unique because you have a person who's had one lived experience on one side of the coin, and then they have a trans experience, and now they're Black men, and then they're experiencing the degradation of being a Black man and the policing of being a Black man, the policing of what being masculine means, what being darker skinned means, fit in the description of things you didn't do. All these dynamics that are in our society that have to do with race, that have to do with how race is seen and how Black people are seen. And I mean, it really speaks to where is the safety? Where is the safety for Black people? Where is the safety for POC people? Where is the safety that no matter what the intersectionality experience is, you have to consider, could my life be over today for things I cannot control, or what I identify with? So I included this in here because it's something that's often overlooked. As we know, even when we're dealing with colorism in our community, POC and Black community, that colorism and the structure of whiteness and what's Black, what's light is right, dark is wrong, dark is always inherently demonic or evil or scary? Why is it that lighter skinned people have this passability, although they still experience racism? We know this. Why is it this acceptability and passability in white spaces? And why is it that darker skinned people, because it's visibly, you can visibly see the darker skin, why do they experience more degradation, more disrespect, etc.? So I included this in here. 1 second. Thank you. So the world ages Black girls up, which leaves them unable to access the privileges of childhood, like the benefit of doubt and punishment situations and support figures like mentors. Black girls are often categorized as little women. Teachers and even parents may expect Black girls to exceed age-appropriate levels of responsibility at home or assume they don't need to be comforted after emotionally distressing events. Compared to white girls of the same age, this survey participants of Georgetown Law Center of Poverty and Inequality perceive that Black girls need less nurturing, Black girls need less protection, Black girls need to be supported less, Black girls need to be comforted less, Black girls are more independent, Black girls know more about adult topics, Black girls know more about sex. And then, I mean, there's this topic of why Black women are often met with masculinization in regards of Black women just being independent and strong, or being women that are unapproachable. All of this stuff is impression on people. All of this stuff is systemic. All of these experiences that Black women, Black trans men, Black trans women, Black queer people that don't fit underneath this monolith comfort have to experience. So it starts at childhood. It starts at youth. So I mean, it's the conversation. It goes back to why you think that youth don't need to know about sexuality and gender. Why don't youth need to know about things that relate to their being and how they're seen and how they maneuver? We understand that we are children. We have to make sure how we relate things to children, and it has to be, in a way that it's not impeding on their stages of readiness. However, children are not dense. They're not obtuse. They get it. They comprehend, especially in the information age. A lot of children do comprehend things that we don't think they do with the access of media. And I think it's a great position in an opportunity, if you are a parent or a person that is teaching a child, to remind them of their power and use things like this to invite a stage of investigation. You can be the best teacher. The world doesn't have to teach them with harm. They can be taught with respect. They can be taught with having their identities or their questioning journey being regarded. So I included this. I thought it was powerful. I love seeing, we don't really get to see Black trans men and Black people of the trans experience that are Black trans men often. And that was really powerful. They're iconic, they're legendary, we love them. So I included a few examples of when you look at these people, you just see man and woman, but they have a different experience. The first person is Kyle Brodes. He's a transgender man. He's actually in politics, which is amazing. Katrina Sorori is non-binary, agender. Laith is a transgender man, and Naomi is a transgender woman. Their pronouns are completely different. He and him, they and them, she and her. And always ask, don't assume. Finally, rare pronouns. So again, ask what your preferred pronouns are. It's always acceptable to just ask in certain spaces. Hi, my name is so-so. My name is Kyle. My preferred pronouns are. That's out the gate. An inclusive effort, and it lets people know, okay, this could be a safe space. I can let my hair down. I may feel comfortable letting you know more things about me. Classic pronouns are he and him, she and her. Pronouns of inclusion include they and them, sie and zier, calls and calls, they and their. There are a lot of pronouns that deal with people's, again, regional identity, cultural identity, as well as pronouns that deal with their lived experience with their gender and their community. So this is just a little guide high too. I kind of said it earlier. Kyle is fine with gender inquisitions. Object, they learned the hard way with them about not minding their business. We often, non-binary people gets a lot of flack about they and them because people are always like, oh, that's plural. Yeah, you know, we get what you're trying to do with that. we know that it's a plural identifier, but it's something that is used interchangeably throughout a lot of things. It's the reason why we say firefighter and not firemen. Like we're trying to get out of that effort that always goes to patriarchy, always goes to the monolith. Possessive, their favorite food is unknown. Possessive pronoun, the gay system is theirs. Reflexive, I can't wait to be with them. Or they can't wait to be with them. Hello, my pronouns are. I included this slide. It's a host of people who are genderqueer, gender nonconforming, gay, lesbian, trans, a host of people who lived experience. They all deserve respect. They all deserve for people to ask them what their pronouns are, and they all deserve safe space. So, as well as consideration of the value of self-identification. So personal expression is not synonymous with personal identifiers. There's no specific look to sexuality, gender conforming, or gender nonconformity. There's no right way to transition, and not everyone wants to transition. And that usually deals with people, you may see people who have the trans experience that still have biological identifiers. Some people will choose not to get breast implants. Trans women will not get breast implants. That does not take away from their transness or their womanhood or how they identify or express their womanhood. I want people to remember that. I think a lot of people, we're visual beings, but a lot of our visual beings still deal with constructs, still deal with things that we think is the right way or the one way, the only way. There's no specific region in which personal identity is exclusively expressed, although there are states and countries that restrict human rights. Personal expression, identity, and pronoun usage belong to the world at large. The reality of limitations among certain populations ignites the reasoning of those with privilege to consider developments with careful intention and safety. By considering a progressive lens regarding people by their personal construct, name, pronoun, and region invites a sense of oneness and mutuality. Utilize neutrality. Respect the person's decision to not self-disclose. Also, there's a reality people don't have to disclose anything to you. However, you have to regard their humanity. So I usually maneuver that by asking a name. A name is the easiest way to avoid the sometimes mishap of mispronouncing somebody or I guess expressing an act of violence. I always tell people that, you know, if you can't get the pronouns right, I would like for you to, if it's something we need to work on and teach, I'm comfortable, everybody will be comfortable with that, but just use my name. My name is Kyle. It's pretty neutral. However you need to do it in your head is up to you. Just respect my humanity. So what happens if you do misgender? Don't freak out, you know, unless you're being intentional, then we might have a problem. But, you know, what if I misgender? What if I make a mistake? If you misgender someone, we have a few stops for you to keep in mind. Realize your impact. You may have hurt the person by misgendering or possibly outing them in public setting. Focus on how you can support the person you misgender. And again, I believe in public mistake or, you know, public disrespect deserve public apology, and, you know, and I have to figure out how to, you know, public change behavior. Apologize. Remember not to out someone in apologies in public settings. Sometimes public apology is most appropriate. I don't agree, but follow up in private if necessary. Remember, it's not about making yourself feel better, but identifying ways to support a person who you may have unintentionally disrespected and hurt. Ask them if they need anything from you and share your plans to getting their pronouns right. Commit to correcting your behavior. We believe in change behavior. Practicing a person's pronouns out loud in a private setting is a helpful strategy for changing the language you use. If you need to practice pronouns with a safe person, you're welcome to use LGBTQI Center staff as a resource. A lot of resources are out there in staff and institutions. A lot of inclusion is being made. If you see LGBTQI Center, more than likely that will also do with gender inclusion. Move forward. Breaking your habits may take some time, but focus on why it's important to get a person's pronouns and names right. You may also find that if you misgender a person, they may want space from you. Respect that they need the space, and commit yourself to including practices that you value. Inclusivity, a lot of efforts can be made through just your email, or Twitter bio, adding pronouns or flexible identification, like forms, in-text forms, and add pronouns to event names tags. These are really, really smart and great ways to let people know, okay, this is not a space where I have to kind of cloak my identity or keep who I am to myself. People are going to respect my humanity in however I identify and express that. So going back to like some stages of heteronormativity. Heteronormativity is just anything that imposes cishetness or heterosexual dominance that deals with what we equate things to be. So for example, male or female gender influenced names, assign gender clothing, assign one as sir or ma'am. That's actually been one that has been surprisingly, what I've had to take a step back from, when I go back to my non-binaryism and like how I want to be identified, I understand that I have a masculine presentation, wig or not. Like I understand that, but there has to be a way as we move forward that I think people are going to realize that even the terms of respect are going to have to match how people show up. So that's one that's evolving. Assigned sex conditioning, heterosexuality and hypersexuality normalization, that deals with the kids. It goes back to, how LGBTQI are policed and degraded and say, you know what, I don't want nobody teaching my, kids need to be kids. But we condition young boys to have little girlfriends at 7 and 5. And we think it's cute. And it is cute, but there's a sense of normalization to what their sexuality can be. We don't know if these kids are having same-sex attraction or thoughts, and we don't know if there needs to be something there. It could be trauma-based. It could be all of these things that can be there, but we know because a boy belongs with a girl, it's all of a sudden cute. But if it's two boys, it's like, oh, that's this is what happens when you have people like me in visibility, and that's not the case. I think we need to take a step back and allow kids to be kids, but it needs to be on the same. It needs to be a balance. It needs to be, what are we really teaching? Is it because does it reflect our values? Does it reflect that we believe heterosexuality is the only way? It's the normal way. How are we seeing this? And I think people should be mindful of how they relay that. Gender and color association. So blue is for a boy, pink is for a girl. Futurism dynamics, that deals with a lot of POC people and how they're embraced and how they're embraced by their features and how those features can offer masculinization and feminization for people of trans experience, non-binary experience, and how people regard them by what they see. Anatomy scrutiny, gender voice specification, deep or light. Oh, you have a deep voice, you got to be a man. Or you have a light voice, you're obviously a woman, or you're more feminine, or you're gay. Marriage and partnership, religious imposition. So the mobility of safe spaces offer intersexual tie-in and implicit and explicit biases check. Human relations, LGBTQI family solidarity, professional maintainability, intentional EDU, fostering comfort and eliminating the static of imposed privilege, the grounding tool, mutuality investigation, opportunity for allyship, and representation. All wonderful, safe, great things that are mutually beneficial. I'm not trying to have LGBTQI supremacy. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is that we matter just as well even under a society that doesn't see us, that doesn't value us. Oh, sorry. So that's, I'm missing the slide. Okay, so that's it. On the whole, that's pretty much the point of the investigation of pronouns. Pronouns always have a backstory. They don't just deal with he, him, you know, she, her. You should ask people stories too. If you're asking somebody's pronouns, usually it's in a setting that offers a safe space that, you know, will give you an insight on how has this person lived experience got them to this point, and how can I respect them? How can they respect me? And how can we have a business relationship, a partnership, a friendship, etc. I hope you all learned a great deal of usages and modalities to how to investigate LGBTQI and genderqueer people. And if you have any questions, I guess we can flow.
So I want you to, one is, thank you. That was amazing. And you did so wonderful considering that we had this crazy interruption.
Okay.
But I actually want you to keep that slide up so folks can just get your information down. I think a lot of people are really appreciating everything that you've been saying throughout this entire presentation. And you answered a couple of questions like, Lindsay had said, you know, should people introduce themselves and say their preferred pronouns up front? And I think that was a big one that you just actually answered. Yes, yes. The easiest way is to say, hey, hi, I'm Yvonne. My preferred pronouns are she, her, hers, they, yeah. You know,
and I want to piggyback off that. Context matters. I'm not saying go out on the street and if you see somebody who looks or appears like, hi, because I want to investigate who you are, my pronouns are. That can have the nuance of an act of violence. You want to really understand the context of this is professional settings. Hi, my name is Kyle, my pronouns are. Or hi, like we did earlier, we're going to change our pronouns or our names to whatever our name is and our pronouns at the end. Those are inclusive efforts that offer a safe space. Yes.
So I wanted to just give a little bit of context. Tyrone had asked about what did you mean by trans and violence, right? Just to give you a little context, over 350 trans were killed last year alone globally. In the United States, the estimated number is anywhere between 44 and 125. So, and a majority of those were trans women, right? And for many of the reasons that Kyle had explained in his presentation. But did you want to expand a little bit on what you mean by, you know, trans and violence?
Well, trans people are facing an epidemic of astronomical acts of violence. Acts of violence is not just physical. Acts of violence can deal with verbal, it can deal with erasure, it can deal with just degrading people's trans experiences via television. But right now, we're literally referring to people literally dying for existing because of implicit or explicit biases. And I think people's argument is a lot of trans women, because of their acts of survivability, are in sex work. They think, well, that's the risk you take. Nobody should die for existing. And a lot of these women, it's not even reported. A lot of these women are in committed relationships or still experiencing intimate partner violence. But because transness and the trans experience, especially trans womanhood, is so heavily policed, it's now become a human rights issue because it's not really about issues of like, you know, I don't like you or you did this, or like, oh, you lied to me or you withheld truth. Nobody should die. So we're experiencing people being eradicated literally for existing. And also after they're eradicated, because media is not educated, their identity and their pronouns is also experiencing an act of violence, and they're not even regarded by the pronoun usage and the identification in which they live their life with. A lot of people would die in a media like they'll use their government name and not their chosen name, not their name that they changed, and they'll use the correct pronoun usage, and that's just complete disrespect.
Yes.
That's what we mean about transcendent violence. Transcendent violence, I think the general consensus, especially in POC focus, is that trans people don't deserve the same human rights and respect as other people.
Right, right. My gosh, yes. Oh my gosh. This has been the most thrilling presentation I've had in a while, so excuse my excitement.
It's okay.
So Diana just asked in the chat, keeping respect and boundaries in mind, how can we gauge when it is appropriate, when we should ask for pronouns, or how do we get a better idea of when a person wants to share their story?
The context of professional or personal. Professional is a little more easier. Professional is more flexible. Professional is like, hi, we're gonna make sure that your pronouns are included. You know, it's structural. Personal, I think like if you're at a party and you see a person that you may think might appear trans, but you have to be careful with that because that can be like teeter-totter on violence, because what is a trans look? But if they're expressing themselves in a way, if they're open about their story, if they're open about, yeah, you know, this is who I am, etc., that mutuality is, what is your name? That grounding tool is, hi, what is your name? Okay, let's work off your name. If you get a little more of an invitation, then I think it's appropriate to be like, okay, well, what are your pronouns? I'm knowledgeable about pronouns. Mine is she and hers. Or mine is he and him. You know, that offers a person like, oh, okay, well, I actually go by she or they or them, because you might get some trans people who are they and them. And I think that offers that mutuality. Context, you know, we don't want to treat trans people, non-binary people, gender non-conforming people like circus acts. We don't want to do that. These are people with a host of things they have to deal with on a daily basis that often include a host of survivability and survival skills. So you want to make sure that the inclusive efforts have a purpose. Make sure is it offering help? Is it offering a mutuality of EDU? Are you just really investigating how can I learn about your story in order for me to be a more decent human being and be an ally, etc. But context is very important. Like with anything, I guess. I don't think we would go up to a person who is white and say, well, why, you know, where are your people from? You know, and you know, we get it, we experience it, but in the lens of human decency, we're not gonna do that. Hi, her, what is your name? Same thing with trans people. Same thing with non-binary people.
These are the last two questions, and in the essence of time, I'm going to kind of combine them. First part, how can we correct others about our preferred pronouns in a respectful yet determined way? And then the second part is, what would you suggest for folks who are kind of still trying to understand their identity in order to even get their pronouns? What would you suggest to them on how to seek that identity?
Well, I'm gonna start with the second question. The second question is more geared towards, do you have any support or any type of resource to give you an idea on what your journey may be? The great thing about 2021 and social media is there are a lot of online forums, especially with COVID-19. There's a lot of online forums that investigate how to bridge community in a virtual space. I would look up in your area virtual spaces that are LGBTQI, virtual spaces that deal with people of the trans experience, of non-binary experience, with a POC focus, if you are a POC person. And I would start there and bridging friendships of people who've already done it. It's nothing wrong with having a mentor. And mentor is not like roboticized and like, oh, I've done this, so I need you to study under me. It's like a person that have paved the way for themselves that will give you the courage to pave the way for yourself. It's a transference of energy. I don't think it's one of those things that it's going to be a quick fix. A lot of people are, and we didn't get a chance to talk about it in great detail, but in questioning individuals have a whole sector of identities that matter to us in LGBTQI. In questioning just means your journey, you're trying to figure it out. But you know you are a part of a community that's not a part of the monolith or the cishet community that you don't identify with. So be a part of community in virtual spaces and start small. Start small, which is understanding what pronouns are and what feels good to you and what makes sense to you by definition. I would say start there. That's a great space. The first question, you want to make sure that you're not coming from a place of offense. You're coming from a place of self-assurance and security, and from a place of you realize your inheritance and you realize your right to self-identify. If a person misgenders you or they continue to misgender you, you have the right to say, if you continue to impart this act of violence against me, I'm going to have to take this step or I cannot speak to you. If I've educated you once, I don't have to educate you twice. I'm that way. I'm not going to educate you twice. It's once. So if I educate you once and you choose other, that lets me know that you have an intentional bias against me, which cool. I don't have to deal with you. Again, context matters. It depends on the settings. But I would just say stand firm in who you are and stand firm in who you are by not compromising to somebody's chosen inability to concede to who you choose to identify.
Thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
This was a very, very, I think, important and engaging presentation. I think I learned so much stuff. I just kept writing during the whole thing. I was like, oh my goodness, this is and I know that our students and our faculty and staff that have joined us today also really had a wonderful experience. A lot of them already had said this was a great, I'm sure, I don't know if you've seen the chat, but it's been going a little bit crazy. I hope that everyone did get Kyle's email, because you could email them for anything, any questions that might be still nagging you. Unfortunately, we don't have any more time in this presentation, but that just means we probably need another presentation. And I want to thank everyone for coming today. The respect you gave before, during, and after our interruption was amazing. And and Kyle, your demeanor throughout the whole thing was also amazing. So thank you so much. And okay.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your
Bye, everybody. Ooh, that was so good.